there, my name is Scott Larson, and I am the creator of the comic book series Visitations. Visitations is the history of Chicago as seen through the eyes of the residents of the city's oldest cemetery. If you'd like to read a free issue of Visitations, please email me at visitationscomicbook@gmail.com, and you would get a free PDF of the first issue of that. I'd like to tell you a story today. 5 years ago this week here in Chicago, we lost the oldest comic book shop that we had had. The shop had started in 1974 and it ran until 2015. And it was one of those things where when the shop closed, it was like this passing of this generation. And it was really sad. And I did some research on some of the old comic book shops, and I realized that the ones here in Chicago that started in the early 1970s were all done by fans. They were started by fans. It was people who had collected comic books, and they had just opened up shops and wanted to trade and talk comics with fans. And one of the things that's happened over the course of the past few years is we've had an explosion of comic shops, and they've gone down. But there's other fan experiences that have been an integral part of this generation. And, you know, we certainly have conventions, but in the past 20 or so years, we've had a number of different websites and podcasts that have popped up. And there's a lot of them that started. There's a lot of them that started in the early 90s, or not in the early 90s, but in the late 90s. There's some that started in the early 2000s. There's some that had news and they're gone now, or they were bought, or this has happened, or that has happened. And I did some research, and I realized that one of the oldest websites, and it became a podcast soon afterwards. Well, about 5 or so years afterwards, is Spider-Man Crawlspace. Spider-Man Crawlspace was started by Brad Douglas in 1998. And I came across him in 2006, right after he started his podcast. I think I started listening with the 4th episode. And the thing about Brad, and the thing that I really like, especially when it comes to turning his show on and listening to him, is he's like the happiest person in the world. You can tell, even if they do videos now here on YouTube, but in the old days, before there was like live streaming onto YouTube, and they just had the downloadable podcast, you could just tell he always had a big smile on his face. He was always happy to be talking to everybody. He's always been super nice and super impressed with everybody who's come on his show. And so I thought it would be kind of neat to talk to Brad and talk to him about his website, and talk to him a little bit about the podcast, and find out how he started the website and where he plans to go with it. So I'm going to bring him on now. And Brad, I'm asking you to start your video, and you're unmuted. Oh, wait, no, you're not.
Unmute. There I am.
Oh, there you go. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm the nicest guy in the world. Nice to see you. That was a nice introduction. Thank you.
Well, it's true.
Appreciate it.
I first heard you. You weren't on your own show. You had guest starred on a different podcast, and this was December of 2006 when I found you.
Okay.
And then I started to listen to your show, and then all of a sudden you had all kinds of guests and all kinds of really cool stuff. And it was a time where things were really changing in the Spider-Man universe, and you got to talk to everybody. And that was pretty unique. It was much different from what anyone else was doing. But and I want to talk to you some more about that. But before I do, I want to talk to you a little bit about you.
Okay.
You started the Spider-Man Crawlspace in 1998. You
did.
said you were a college student at the time. How old were you?
Oh, I was like 21 or so.
Okay.
Back in 1998. And I was on summer break, and I was surfing, and I saw a ad that said free website. It might have been a pop-up ad. I don't know if it was, but it was advertising GeoCities before Yahoo bought them. And you could start your own website. And I'm like, you know what? That's kind of cool. What would I put on my own website? And I looked at all the Spider-Man posters around my room. I think I might do a Spider-Man website. So that was in August of 98, right before I went back to college.
That's really neat. Now,
Yeah.
I actually jumped the gun here a little bit because
Okay.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your own fan life before that.
Okay.
And I know some of these answers because you talk about it all the time on your podcast, or you have.
Yeah.
What was your first interaction with anything comic book related?
It was probably either Electric Company, with the word balloon popping Spider-Man that helped you read. Have vivid memories of watching Electric Company, and then the syndicated 60s Spider-Man show came on probably within that afternoon. And then in 81, Spider-Man's Amazing Friends came on the air. I fell in love with that. At the time I was watching the live action Lou Ferrigno, Bill Bixby show, The Hulk. So when I would go to a gas station, I still claim these two as my favorite heroes, Spider-Man and Hulk. And I have a fond memory. The comic I remember the most was Marvel Team Up Annual 2. And on the cover was Spider-Man and Hulk. And I'm like, what are these cool things called comic books? And let's get one every time we fill up our gas tank. So they were on a spinner rack. And I was like, I watch these guys all the time on television. So they're in comics too. So I would read them. And I remember the old Power records. You remember those?
Mm-hmm.
That was a comic book. You put the record on. It was narration of the comic. I had those. And
Spider-Man versus the Dragon Man from
Dragon Man
Space.
and Manwolf was another one. That
Yeah.
What was that guy, dragon's name? Draco the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And Manwolf was more of an adaptation of the story. And Hulk was an adaptation too, but Draco the Dragon was original. So those are all my early memories of Spider-Man. Also the Mego. I had a Spider-Man Mego and Hulk, and they were held together with rubber bands inside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you played with them too much, they would break, and it was all a ploy to buy you another Mego. So, but yeah, those were my early memories of Spider-Man.
So the Marvel Team Up Annual 2 was a very specific reference you threw out there. Did you actually buy that?
Yeah, it was on the spinner.
Mom? Okay.
My mom picked that up. That was on the spinner rack, and it was an annual, so it was more expensive. I think it was either 75 cents or $1 when comics were 50 cents back in the day, and 60 cents in the 80s. So it was a double-sized issue. So I started with a big old chunk of a comic book.
And do you still have that issue?
It's tattered, yes, but I still have that issue. Yeah, it's somewhere in the Marvel Team Up section, but it's beat up. You can tell it was red. Mm-hmm. So I also used to get they used Whitman, I think, made Spider-Man coloring books. Mm-hmm. I had a ton of those. Colored the heck out of those. So
didn't he fight a clone in one of those coloring books?
He did. He fought a robot that looked like a clown. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So yeah, had a ton of those.
And then, so my assumption is you continued collecting all through childhood and going into college.
Yes, I've never stopped Spider-Man, and I guess that dates back to '78. I've come across several fans, including JR, who's on my show. He's older than I am, and he's stopped Spider-Man at several points. I consider him like a friend I check in with, if not monthly, if not more than monthly. I mean, I've only come close to quitting one time, and that was due to a creator really ticking me off. But, and that was a recent creator, but I don't want to badmouth him. But I honestly was like, why am I doing this if I'm not enjoying it? But I figured I've been in this long, I'm going to outlast that creator. And I did. So, but I just enjoy that character. I don't know what it is. It's someone has a hobby. Everybody has a hobby, and mine involves a guy that climbs webs and spins webs. So,
well, I'm gonna tell you a little personal story right now. My first issue of Amazing Spider-Man was number 255, and I got it because he had the black costume.
Oh yeah, man, that was awesome.
And I had decided right there and then that I was going to buy the entire series. I was going to have every issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah. And I ended up getting every issue of Amazing Spider-Man.
Nice.
And I had it for about a decade. And then a few years ago, I decided that I was going to get rid of my comic collection. They were like bills.
No.
And so my wife would not let me get rid of Amazing Fantasy 15.
Oh,
but almost everything else went.
Yeah.
And as soon as it was out the door,
Yeah.
I think it was within 15 minutes of it being out the door, I was like, I just sold my best friend.
Yeah.
And I thought, what am I going to do? And I've got you back here. You can see there's all kinds
trades,
of trades and everything, not the same.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I ended up rebuying number 35, which was one of the Ditko issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe I'll just collect the Ditko issues and leave it at that. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll just get the first 100 and then leave it at that. And then I'm half done with the collection again. So I'm going to have it all back. I cannot stay away from it.
Yeah. It is this just amazing? Are you talking about spec and web and adjective
Just
list?
amazing.
Just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I maybe every 15 or 20 years I buy an expensive one.
Mm-hmm.
But I've said this on the show before. I have 1, 3, 14, 21 to current. And I used to be 22 to current. And I went to your hometown of Chicago to the Wizard World probably 9 years ago, and I bought 21, which is the one with Human Torch and Spider-Man on the cover, and the Beetle. Yeah. So the Scorpion one is the next one that I am looking for. It's you pay the mortgage, or am I spending $1,000 on a comic book when I have it on Marvel Unlimited? If I ever wanted to go back, and I have it in Marvel Tales, I have Masterworks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is hard to justify a $1,000 or $500 or whatever it is purchase. But yeah,
it's a really interesting thing, and it's part of the price of being a fan.
Yeah. No doubt.
And I when I was at Wizard World a couple of years ago, I was talking to this guy who does a lot of work with Graham Cracker's comics here in Chicago, and he runs the Hero Initiative at these conventions. And when I was talking to him, I mentioned that I had gotten rid of my collection and I had to rebuy it. And he just nodded his head like he knew.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, that's a rite of passage. It's not enough to be a fan and a collector. You got to get rid of it and then go back and get it back.
Yeah. Did you sell it as a big lot or piece by piece?
It was a big lot.
Yeah. You probably took a hit on it as a big lot. I hear you make more money if you split it up.
Well, it was a friend of mine knew one of the guys who goes and does dealing at comic conventions.
Okay.
And so I don't want to talk too much about that on the air because I wasn't super thrilled with the way that went down. But
yeah.
But that being said, it was it all left at the same time. And I remember there was a Batman cover that was staring at me as it was going into the car, and I was watching it, and I was like, stop looking at me like that. I have you on my shelf.
That's like Toy Story with the toys going away on the car. You've got a friend. Oh no, I'm gonna cry.
So you were doing browsing in 1988, looking for Spider-Man websites and looking at all kinds of stuff. When did you start? And I'm assuming you had mentioned earlier that there was a computer lab at college. I'm assuming you also had your own computer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did, but it was dial-up. So when, in the late 90s, if you wanted high-speed internet, you'd go to college to the computer labs and surf, and you could open up the Netscape browser, and you could surf probably more than 56K that you could get at home with your dial-up. So I went to the college computer lab in 95, probably in the summer of 95, and I did a Yahoo search for Spider-Man, and spiderfan.org popped up, which I consider that's the very first Spider-Man website. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, there's other people like me. They like Spider-Man too. That's cool. Because I was, with the exception of going to like maybe a show on a weekend or something, I didn't think there were that many people that like comic books. Little did I know. Mm-hmm. But about 95, I got a computer and hooked it up to the dial-up phone line. So anytime you tried to call us, you'd hear the busy signal. But I had a hard drive space of 1.5 gigabytes. That was my hard drive space in 95. And that was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So, surfing at the computer lab for that one. And also samruby.com was one of the very first Spider-Man websites I ever went to. and Sam Ruby's gone. Eric got out of it when Brand New Day hit. Spiderfan.org stopped doing new stuff about 2015 at the end of Brand New Day. This comicboards.com/SMB, I think they're still around. You can still post on there, but those were the three that I really went to often in the 90s.
So you mentioned Brand New Day, but I want to bring something else up. So you started in 1998.
Yeah.
The Clone Saga ended in like November of 96.
Yeah.
And 1997 was a pretty dead time when it came to Spider-Man. And I think John Byrne started in 99. So you started in 98.
Yeah.
And the books at the time was still basically the aftermath of all the Clone Saga stuff. I know Tom DeFalco was on Amazing. J.M. DeMatteis was on Spectacular, and Todd DeZago was on
Sensational.
Right, I almost called it Web. But I think DeFalco's run at that point was pretty good. I didn't read a whole lot of DeMatteis's stuff in that particular era.
Right.
And
there was also Howard Mackey and John Romita Jr. on adjective list. Yeah, that was the best one in my opinion. I thought that one was pretty good.
So while this is going on, where we'll just call it the books that hit like the breaks, we'll say. What made you decide to do a website then? Because there wasn't a whole lot new coming, and I was under the impression at the time that they were kind of going around in circles creatively, on their end. They didn't quite know what was going to happen with the character. And I think comics in general at that point too, the DC stuff hit the skids after they brought Superman back and after they broke Batman's back. And then it's like everything started collapsing in on itself. And that was like right in the middle of everything collapsing in. So, and I'm assuming that you were still buying the books then. You said that you never took a break.
Yeah, I have.
What were you planning for the website at that point? Were you planning to be doing reviews? Were you planning to just like look into the past? Were you what?
So what? One of the first things I remember is a teaser image of Chapter 1, Issue 1. By John Byrne, and he's homaging the Kirby Ditko holding the dude. I remember that was the first thing I kind of messed with, where I typed in HTML code, which was IMG SRC equals quote the website address and then quote again. I learned HTML from that. It wasn't a planning of a launch of a website. It was like, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's see if there's somebody else out here. Let's see if I could talk to some other people. And you remember guest books back in the day? Hey, welcome to my website. Sign my guest book. So my mom was the first person to sign my guest book. A couple buddies from college signed my guest book. And then a Marvel editor signed my guest book. And I'm like, whoa, Keith R.A. DiCandido was in charge of the Marvel Prose books, the printed books that were coming out in the late 90s. And I loved those things. And I like Spider-Man, the Venom Factor, I think, was one of the first ones that came out. Diane Duane wrote that one. And so along with putting comic reviews, so I'd like write like a paragraph or two about what I thought of Amazing Spider-Man. I also had X-Men and Hulk issues that I reviewed during the month. I'm like, what am I getting this month? I'll type it out what I think, and I'll give it 4 spider heads out of 4 or whatever. So in the comment section on the guest book, the editor said, hey, thanks for reviewing the books that I edit. Now, you don't see many of those on the internet, and I'm glad that you liked them. And I thought that was the coolest thing. This internet thing, I can talk to people in charge at Marvel. How awesome is that? So I think shortly after that, I searched the web for message boards where you could get like a free message board. So I would put a link on the front page with my reviews, and we could discuss Spider-Man with the fans, and people started coming into the message board. And that was fun. That was pre-social media. That was me interacting with the fans. So, I'm still doing that today by doing a podcast. So it was neat on my end to find so many people out there that like Marvel and love Spider-Man. So I was just like, you know what, this is kind of fun. Let's see where this goes. And I don't want to jump your question, but in 2000, I registered the domain name spidermancrawlspace.com, and I got off of the free website, and then I started getting bills for it. But it was nice to say, what's your website, instead of geocities.com/vault/starship51 or whatever the website address was. I could tell them spidermancrawlspace.com. So 2000, after 2 years of GeoCities, I kind of made the commitment, like, all right, this is going to be a hobby. Just like picking up Spider-Man regularly, the website, I think when I have enough fun with it, I can justify the cost, and I love interacting with the fans. So that's kind of the early origins of it.
So how expensive was it?
Well, I had to, I bought a 2-pack, I think for like $150. Back in the day, it was called Microsoft Front Page, and it was software that you would design on your computer, and it could design a website. I also did Microsoft. They don't make this program anymore. It was called PhotoDraw. Mm-hmm. And it was the early version of Photoshop, so I could make images, etc. And heck, I don't know. It was maybe $100 a year back in the early days when I wasn't getting huge traffic. So, but $100 to a kid that just got out of college is $100, you know? I mean, but sure. I figured it was worth it. So
what was your traffic like at the time?
What was my what?
What was the traffic like?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe a few hundred to 1,000. It spiked in 2002 when the Tobey Maguire movie came out. It went through the roof there. Also, USA Today picked me up. Entertainment Weekly picked me up. Wizard picked me up. I did interviews for all those things, all those news outlets, and they would always put the website at the bottom. So that's really when it went gangbusters, 2002, with the Tobey Maguire movie. So
okay, I want to ask more about that. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a funny story tying into the conversation about message boards, and I've told this on the show before. Pop-Tarts had a promotion with Spider-Man, and they said on commercials, etc., log on to the Spider-Man website and put in this code, and you can get free comics. I don't even remember what the prize was. So my message board was filled up with people entering random codes that were on their Pop-Tarts box. And I'm like, dude, this isn't the official Sony website of Spider-Man. I mean, but thanks for your Pop-Tart code and spamming my board with all this stuff. So that was just to show you how excited people were for that first Spider-Man movie.
That's really interesting. You know, today, if you did something like that, you just collect their email addresses and they join your email list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But nope, there wasn't very many Spider-Man sources on the internet, even in 2002. So they thought I was officially tied in with who makes Pop-Tarts? Hostess? I don't know.
No, I want to say it's Kellogg's, but I know
Kellogg's. Yeah, that's probably right.
It?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
So before we go further, I'm going to show the picture you sent me of what the original website looked like.
Okay, cool.
Hold on 1 second.
There wasn't much change between the GeoCities look and the .com look. I kind of kept the same template.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I thought this thing was open. Oh, wait, it is. There it is. Hold on one moment. All these technological stuff. Would you have been able to do this in 1998?
No, I was just happy to see an image slowly download. Something's starting. I see a screen share.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
You see it?
Well, that shows you the different looks of it throughout the years. Yep.
Okay. And then am I able to scroll down?
You can click on one of those images, I think. That's the early image of it right there.
Okay, that's the first one. So what would happen if I clicked on one of the links there?
You go to a review section. At the very top, I had a news section, which was what's happening in Spider-Man news. Back in the early 90s, people liked to link to each other. So you would see samruby.com, spiderfan.org. On those, under those Spider-Man links.
Mhm.
Very top was the message board, like I talked about. I wanted to put that at the very top, so that'd be the first thing people would see. Oh, I had a chat room. That's funny. Not many people used it, but I had a chat room. Weird Marvel Collectibles was one of the very first things, one of the first sections I had, because I would just scour eBay or Google Images, etc. I'm like, well, that's funny that Marvel did that, and they had Spider-Man toilet paper.
You
Hulk.
talk about the Spider-Man toilet paper a lot on your show.
I love that. The toilet paper is just so funny. Um, they had Hulk ashtrays, so I would put a random image that I found and put on there. As you can see, there's Marvel Heroes reviews and X-Men reviews. Looks like I reviewed Uncanny X-Men and regular X-Men. Marvel Heroes involved Cap and Iron Man. And, oh, I did New Warriors, it looks like. And there's those Marvel novels reviews that I was talking about. So I tried to review all those. What does that? Oh, Spider-Man pics. That was just random Spider-Man pictures that I found. You can maybe use as wallpaper.
Mhm.
And then updates list on the bottom right. I would manually put the date of what I changed on the site and put a link to what's new. And there was a counter on the very bottom that showed you how many people visited it. There were little animated GIFs that little spiders crawling at the very bottom. And that, what does that say? Updated or created August 8th, 1998 at 1:31 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
and when that screen cap was taken, I updated August 11th, 2000. You're testing my eyesight on that image, but
Yeah, I can't see it either. I'm not even going to attempt it.
I think that's Internet Explorer browser too. You can tell how old the browser is when I took that screen cap too. So there's that guest book on the left too.
Uh-huh.
So, yep, that's what it looked like back in 2000. I think that's a screen cap of 2000.
And then before we leave today, and I'm going to stop the sharing.
Okay.
Before we leave today, I'm going to show what the site looks like now.
Okay. Cool.
Because it is a little bit different. So we were talking a little bit earlier, and I'm really curious about that. So about this. So you talked about spiderfan.org and how they haven't done anything since 2015.
Uh-huh.
And you've talked about some of these other places. So my sense is, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're one of the oldest sites that is still being operated on a day-to-day, because I know you change it every day, and I know it's not just you now. We'll talk about that in a second.
Right.
But a comic book related website, which is not dccomics.com or marvelcomics.com, right. When something like Newsarama was bought out by Game Radar, and so they don't even exist anymore, and a lot of these other places don't even exist, or they've changed their names or whatever. So what's your secret? How were you able to do this? How are you able to continue to do it after 22 years?
It's a lot. I hit my mission of finding other Spider fans that like him. It's just as much as I do. And I don't think you would have the daily content if it was just me. Nowadays, my biggest contributions are the social media stuff and editing the podcast and recording the podcast. Those are my big three things that I do. I have a staff, I'd say about 20 that do reviews. They do daily images on the front page in social media. I have panelists that are on the podcast. So a lot of us contribute to what's on the front page. So if it was just myself, I couldn't do it. It would not be updated daily like you've noticed. So yeah, so what's my trick? What's your secret? What's my secret is just a passion for the character and finding friends that also share the passion and they want an audience to talk to about the same character that we all love. So I've often been told I'm loyal. I mean, I guess I'm loyal to Spider-Man. I fell in love with them when I was like 3 or 4, and I've not given up. I've been married 15 years, and I'm loyal to my wife. I guess I'm just a loyal guy. If I like something, I stick with it, and I try not to abandon it. But Anyway, that's the best answer I got.
It's I was talking to some people last week. We were talking about Star Trek,
Yeah.
and it's when you're a fan of stuff and someone comes along and changes it or messes with it or does something,
Yeah.
the first thing is like, how dare you? And then it's like, well, are you ever going to quit? It's like, no, these are my stories.
Right.
And I think that it's not just you fall in love with this stuff, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been with Spider-Man since 1984.
Right.
And whereas, maybe there was like a month or two where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore, I always went back.
Mm-hmm.
And even with the Burn era, even with the Brand New Day era, even with all the stuff, where it ran out of steam, was just going on with fumes.
Yep.
You just stick with it. And there's a point with this stuff where the character just becomes a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's not being written right.
Yep.
Because it's like, he'd never say that.
Nope.
And then it's like, okay, well, I got to ride this out and just hope for the best.
It's like I said, you're in it for the character, and there are high points and low points. And when the low points become long and long and long, you question yourself, do I want to stick this out? Mm-hmm. And I've been here this long. I don't see a point where I'm ever going to stop loving Spider-Man. I mean, I've gone more than half my life collecting Spider-Man. I was 4. If you look over my shoulder, I've got the Halloween costume I wore when I was a little kid. I mean, I'm a 45-year-old dude. Still in love with Spider-Man. I don't think I'll quit, but I don't see an ending.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll always want to know what's going on in the Marvel universe.
So tell me about the first people who came on to help. You mentioned you've got 20 employees now.
They're not employees. We're all friends and volunteers. I wish I could pay them all. That would be nice. The first 2 people that came on the show were posted a lot on the message board were Kevin and Zach. Mm-hmm. And on the 3rd episode was JR. And we started the podcast in 2006 with that. Do you want to talk about who started writing on the, are we talking about podcast or website? Because 98 is the website, 2006.
Website was what I was thinking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I do want to ask you about the podcast, because I think there's real interesting things there as well.
There's been so many reviewers over the years that have added content to the front page. Too many that I can even name. They last anywhere from a year or 2, and some last longer. But there's been a lot of people that I can't name them all.
So there we were in 1998, and you started your own website.
Right.
And then you bought the domain name, and you continued on. And then in 2006. So when in 2006 did you start the podcast? It
was also in August, ironically.
Okay.
So August of 2006. Yeah.
Okay. So give me a little bit of background on how that came about.
As you mentioned with your interview that you did with Stella, which I thought was awesome, she mentioned John Suntress with Word Balloon. Mm-hmm. That was the very first podcast I ever saw or listened to. And I'm like, well, you know what? This would combine 2 of my favorite things, which is broadcasting and Spider-Man. I have a journalism degree. I have a communications degree. I love to talk. I love to broadcast. And finding, just like I did in 98, finding an audio audience like I did a website audience, I thought that would be fun. I think that would be cool. People had the MP3 players. They put the earphones in. They could listen to me talk about Spider-Man with my friends. And I thought that was kind of cool. So I signed up again, very similar to GeoCities. I signed up for a website. I forget what website it was, but I remember the more popular you got, the more you had to pay. So I remember that distinctly. So we hit that pretty quick. It was neat and we were the first Spider-Man podcast. Unlike the website, we were the first Spider-Man podcast online. So it was cool to launch that, and there's been a lot since. So,
so you were talking about your journalism background. Were you I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you were working in journalism at that time.
Yep.
So were you interviewing people at the time?
Yeah, I was a on-air reporter every night on the NBC station in Southwest Missouri. I had a segment on the news called Brad's Beat. It was the human interest stories. So I put in my dues. I did the murder and the crime, etc. And then I got a nice segment that I could do every night at 6. So that was fun. So yeah, I've interviewed people for 20 plus years with my old job. So I still get, it's funny, I get nervous interviewing spider creators more than I do like other people that I've interviewed and that are celebrities, etc. So, but it was more I'm trying to think that aren't spider related, like Drew Barrymore I've interviewed, Noah Wiley, etc. But when you get Nicholas Hammond in front of me, I got a little bit of butterflies and Stan Lee, etc.
So all right. So we're gonna go there in a minute.
Okay.
So
which one, Stan? We're talking about Stan? Okay.
Yeah. So you start the podcast in August 2006.
Yeah.
And so what was the format in August of 2006?
It was review the latest issues and also talk about Spider News.
Okay.
Like what's happening in Spider-Man's universe. Let's talk about a topic like JMD Straczynski is wrapping up his run. Let's talk about that. Civil War is coming up. What is Civil War? Back in Black. He's going to be in the black costume again. What? So we talk about that. We'd get the at the time there was Peter Parker Spider-Man, Amazing and Sensational, I think, in 2006. And we were to
right, and it had been Marvel Knights, and then it became
Marvel Knight. Yeah. So we were to review, I think there was 3 main Spider-Man books at the time, if not 4. So we'd review 3 or 4 issues. I might split them up into a news show and a review show. But that was pretty much the format. The early format was recording once a month. I would get them on the phone via Skype, and I had to figure out how to record their audio. If you listen to the very first couple episodes, I couldn't figure that out. But I eventually got a Skype recorder. It was a program that would record their voices, etc. So, and now we're doing videos.
Yeah. Well, the world changes. So when I mentioned that I found you, New Year's Eve of 2006 was when I first listened to your show.
Okay.
So I was right. It was like the 4th episode.
Okay, there you go.
It started in August.
Yeah.
Once a month. So
that's funny.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
You've been listening a long time. You're one of the longest listeners then. That's crazy.
Yeah, you mentioned Word Balloon, and I know John Suntress, and I'll tell you what I told him as far as the shows is there are times when you want to listen to your podcasts, and you listen to them. And you listen to them all at once. And then there are times where it's like, I want to listen to classical music now, or I want to listen to this now, or I want to listen to that. And so things pile up. Yeah. So I haven't listened to your show regularly, and I'll have it running on YouTube, but I don't watch the video because I like listening. I think it's more of an audio thing than a visual thing. Although everybody's doing visual things right now, including this thing. But they're piling up. So I'm going to go back to those. The last time I was listening regularly, I want to say, was right after Steve Ditko died. And you had Roger Stern and Tom DeFalco on to talk about that. And that was really interesting. I thought that was a good show. Really, really, really great show.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. Yeah.
So tell me about the comic guests, the professional guests, not
if memory serves, the very first one was Peter David. I thought just called him on the phone. That was cool.
How did that come about? How did you find him, or how did he find you?
Let's see. I think I got his email off of his website, and I emailed him. and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing called a podcast. It's like a radio show. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about you writing Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And I'll just ask you some questions, etc." Predating the podcast, Paul Jenkins, who I interviewed again over the summer, him and I did a email interview. So I wrote him some questions. He would write me back the answers, and I would cut and paste the text and put it on the website so people can see a written interview. But other people I've interviewed on the show, you talked about Roger Stern. That was a big one. Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends were one of the early ones when Spider-Girl was still being published. That was fun. That led into my second interview with them, which included Stan Lee, which was fun.
You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's fun. Sal Buscema was celebrating his 40th year at Marvel Comics. And I thought to myself, you know what would be cool? I've already interviewed Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends. What if I got those two on the line and some of Sal's pals? Nice alliteration there. So predating that show, I found something on YouTube, Stan Lee related, and I put it on the front page of the site, and I got an email that said, "Hey, Stan would like to have a video of that." And I'm like, well, I didn't really make it, but they were like, "Can you send us a video of it on a disc?" And I'm like, well, okay. So I don't know how I did it, but I downloaded the video from YouTube, put it on a disc, burned it, mailed it to Stan's office, and that worked. So wait
a second. Hold on. Yeah. Stop right there.
Yes.
So I'm sorry. Either my mind wandered somewhere on the line, or I missed something. So, so you're talking about the 40th anniversary of Sal Buscema's.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You did a video of that?
No. Okay. So I'm talking about how I got a hold of Stan Lee on the show to celebrate with Sal Buscema. I put something Stan Lee related on the website. Stan's people or somebody saw it, and they're like, "Can we have a video of that?" I'm like, "And can you mail it to us?" I'm like, "Well, let me figure this out." So I did. And when I was putting the Sal Buscema show together, I'm like, I've got Stan Lee's people's email, and I've already done a favor for him. Why? I bet you they would come on the line for me. And they were like, "Sure, Stan loves Sal." And I'm like, so that's awesome. So I held that secret away from Sal until he was actually on the line, and he just lit up. He just loved that, having Stan Lee celebrate him. And I'm not sure Stan knew we were broadcasting, because he was a little, how the hell are you doing? He was really not PG Stan. I thought that was really kind of fun. But
he hung up on Barack in order to talk.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Yes. That's a line from the show. Who else have we had? We've had Kathy Garver and Dan Gilvazan, who are the voice actors of Spider-Man's Amazing Friends, which is one of my favorite Spider-Man cartoons. I thought that was a fun interview. Who else have we had on? We've had Josh Keaton, who's the voice of the Spectacular Spider-Man voice actor. We've had people that have written Spider books. We've had Dan Slott on the show. I've had Steve Weicker, the editor, during Brand New Day. Mm-hmm. We've had JMD Mateus on the line. Mm-hmm. He was a great interview. I'm probably forgetting someone else. Nicholas Hammond and Ellen Bry, the Spider-Man 77 show reunion. We just did that one this month or last month. But yeah, interviewing these people that have created Spider-Man stuff that I've loved over the years is always a thrill. It's so neat to have them on. And I always get, Paul Soles, the 1967 Spider-Man voice actor. He was a cool interview. I enjoyed that one too. So it's always a thrill to get Spider creators on the show. So,
well, you had interviewed Peter David a couple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Multiple times. And so let me ask you this real quick. So you've had all these people who you've interviewed, and you have a journalism background, and so you're kind of used to that, even though it made you a little bit nervous as you were doing it. What did you take away from these interviews? What did you learn from them? As far as anything, I mean, it's always wonderful that something is thrilling. But was there anything that you learned from these interviews that you didn't know before, and you're like, oh wow, that's really interesting, or oh hey, maybe I'll change the way I'm doing the show because of that? Well, was there anything like that?
Not really. The only common theme throughout them all is they're amazed that we're still talking about their work so many years later. Star Trek people have it, that they're surprised that we're still talking about a show so many years later. I think there's something similar that Star Trek does with Spider-Man, in the fact that if someone wrote a book in 1970, we still want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man is such a long-term character that people are still examining it today. I mean, there have been comics that have been produced back in the 60s and 70s that no one talks about. But Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, people still have an interest in it. And I generally think, at least with the most recent one, the Nicholas Hammond one, he's amazed. A show that he did that lasted 2 seasons, I'm still interested. And so many people came into the live chat from around the world to talk to him. And he was just amazed how much people love this character. And I'm one of them, that the love just goes through decade by decade, and they were part of the journey. So they are amazed that we're still interested in what they did. So.
Well, I think that with some of the older people, mm-hmm. and this is just my personal commentary on that, with some of the older people, it was a job.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, it wasn't like a Dan Slott or somebody who's come after him, where it's like, this is what I loved as a kid and now I'm doing it. It was, this is what I'm doing now in order to make a paycheck so I can feed my family, and then that's it. You interviewed John Romita Jr.
Oh, yeah. He was a good one.
A lot about that. He talked about his bills a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And and it's, I'm an artist, and he's actually one of my favorites. And there's, do you do it for the love of it, or do you do it because it's a job? And and there's some happy medium in between. And I think that mm-hmm. people pre 1990, I'll call it, mm-hmm. saw it as a job.
Yeah.
And so when it's 2020, and whether it's comic book artists or comic book writers or actors or, voice actors, that's how they're looking at it. Mm-hmm. And, but now it's different, and so I think these people coming up don't feel that way. They know, because they were part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They know this is going to have a legacy.
Yeah. And especially something like Spider-Man.
Exactly.
Where he's been around for over 50 years, when you're dealing with a character and he's been around for 5, well, that's a different story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Much like the Crawlspace website, you've been around for 22 years.
Right.
So what kind of advice would you give to somebody? So right now, anybody can do this. Mm-hmm. I mean, clearly I'm able to get on YouTube and do this. So anybody can do it. If I'm doing it, anybody can do it. So, but what would your advice be for somebody who wanted to, start a website or start a podcast? How would you go about doing that? What would be the first thing?
Well, I would pick a topic that you love, because when you have a stressful day at work or you want to retreat somewhere, you need to enjoy the topic. I love Spider-Man. This is taking away time from my family. Sometimes this is taking away time from reading Spider-Man. So you got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy interacting, and don't make it a job. Make it a hobby, because most websites aren't going to make much money, and you're doing it for the love of the character and also the love of your friendships that you get from the people that you meet via this. If I didn't start a website, I wouldn't have met you. I mean, just all those people that come in on chat when we do a live broadcast, I wouldn't have met them. They're around the world, etc. So advice number 1, find a topic you like. Number 2, do it because you love it. And it is a stress reliever. If it gets stressed that I got to turn out a podcast every month, then no. Because your enjoyment can be heard through your voice and through your actions, etc. That this is a job. I've got to update the website. I've got to edit another podcast. So if you don't enjoy it, don't do it, because it would be another job that doesn't pay very well usually. The one thing I've tried to do with this website over the years is keep, at least if embrace new technology. And I have found myself the last maybe 5 years, I'm getting a little slow with it, with I guess my age and also having a kid too. Message boards were new in 98. I put a message board on my site. Chat rooms were new in 98. I put a chat room on my site. Podcasts were new in 2006, and I was the first to do the Spider-Man podcast in 06. I was kind of late to the YouTube game. There are a lot of other YouTube channels out there that have a lot more subscribers than I do. I would say within the last 3 or 4 years, I really started doing the broadcasting to YouTube. I'm a little late to the Discord game. George, who's on my show, loves Discord. He started up the Discord channel. So he kept the Crawlspace up to date with that newest technology. Be on the forefront of embracing what the next generation is going to get your content from. Social media, I was pretty good with the Facebook, updating the Facebook stuff and getting a Crawlspace Facebook page. But here's another example. There's more avenues to get your signal out. I'm finding. And I think it was Javi who made our Instagram Crawlspace page. I was late to the Instagram page. Now I find myself putting content on the Instagram page. So when I put an update out, it generally, to get more people into the site to see what we were making, I put it out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We stream now to Twitch. That's the newest thing that we're doing. I barely know what Twitch is, but we're sending a signal there. That's mainly for video game broadcasts is what I found, but now people have opened it up a little bit more to other content. So be on the forefront of tech and how to get your signal out to let the masses know what you're doing, I guess, is the final thought of that. And I try to send out a signal as many places as I can so people see what we're doing at the Crawlspace.
So I've got two questions.
Okay.
2 more questions. Actually, I'm sure I have like 100 more questions.
I'm ready. Hit me.
So here's a question for you. So, comic books are a creative thing. Mm-hmm. And, you've got the writers and the artists and the letterers and the colorists and the editors and everything. And obviously, Spider-Man has affected your life in a way. How do you feel you've affected the comic book community?
I like to feel that I've created a nice sandbox for Spider-Man fans to play in. And let's say I have a house party and I'm inviting Spider-Man fans over, and the Crawlspace is my house. So come on over. Let's talk Spider-Man. Let's broadcast about Spider-Man. It's a site that I would like to go to. It's a podcast that I would like to listen to. It's social media that I would like to visit. And just come on over and let's talk Spider-Man. That was my main goal in 98. It's still my main goal in 2020. I want to find people like me that love Spider-Man as much as I do. And let's discuss the latest issues. Let's talk about his history. Let's go through it.
So do you, and I asked Stella this, and so you probably know that it's coming to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself a creator?
I consider myself a Crawlspace creator. And the fact that I create reviews of the comics, I create interviews. I just interviewed 2 of the guys that have 2 of the biggest Spider-Man collections. I interviewed the Guinness Book of World Records Spider-Man collector. So I create content in that area. Okay. I create discussions on Spider-Man. This is kind of what Stan wanted in the letters pages. This is a modern letters page in that fans are discussing what's going on in Spider-Man. It's just called the internet. So, and mine's just a little outlet that Spider-Man fans can gather and talk Spider-Man like I wanted to do. So yeah, I edit a lot of content.
Uh-huh.
So 600, 640 podcasts. So I would consider that creating something. So yeah.
Well, I would consider you a creator as well. But it's always interesting to see how people feel about themselves and the stuff that they're putting out.
Right.
And it's what, 2020, even though it feels like 2029 or 2030.
Yeah. This is
Um,
month 45 of
yeah,
2020.
right. But I've been with your site for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And it's like I said, it's sometimes it's on and off, sometimes it's just not. I need to hear something else, or I need to look at something else, but I always go back.
That's cool.
So I'm going to show real quick I'm going to show what the site looks like now.
Okay.
And then here we go.
It's funny, when we did that 22nd anniversary podcast, in the chat, I think someone wrote that I started going to the Crawlspace when I was in middle school. Now I'm married and I'm out of college, and I'm like, 22 years is a big chunk of change. I mean, that's a long time.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely, it is, and it's interesting. One of the things I wanted to say at the beginning, I kind of forgot about it, was, I'm assuming, because everybody has this, on your cell phone, you're able to take photos.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's been taking photos for a while. And every once in a while, my photos go right up to Google Photos. And so you can go and you can take a look back. And I scroll down to 2010 is where I think I started that. And it was like one picture, and it's almost like the world didn't exist before then. But when I was thinking about your site earlier today, I was thinking, well, your site is kind of like that, to where it's evolved. But at one point it didn't exist, but it's this thing now. And there's kind of no going back. I mean, personally, I think that as a Spider-Man fan and as a fan of your site, I learned a lot about the character, and I learned a lot about creating comics just from listening to some of these interviews. And so a site like yours and a podcast like yours has an effect, whether you know it or not.
Oh, thank you.
And
cool.
it's an interesting thing. So here, I'm going to share what the page looks like now. And I see that you have you've got a COVID ad, which is important.
Gee, thanks, Google Ads.
Hold on one second. Let me scroll down. Okay, so here we go.
There you go.
Okay, can you see the whole thing?
Yeah, I can see the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I actually moved the window over.
Yep.
So you've got the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Which is Spider News.
Vote or die. It's funny what those are Google ads.
I know
they are based on your search history. That's funny. That's funny.
So I'm not going to ask about that. No, I won't ask about that either.
There's panel of the day. That's another guy that does every day. Adam posts a panel of Spider-Man every single day, and he's up to 972 of them. He's just awesome to do that every single day.
There's an earwax thing.
There's Mark Alford's review of the latest Amazing Spider-Man.
And then you have somebody from Chicago here where I am, correct?
Yep, Chi-Town Spidey. You will probably see one of his reviews if you scroll down. Peter, there he is right there. That's Peter. He had a commission by Carlos Gomez of him getting a selfie with Mary Jane. And Peter has been in the letters pages of Amazing Spider-Man, I think 5 or 6 times. Mm-hmm. So, those two fellows do such a great job. And I've got Ryan Reed doing video reviews of Amazing Spider-Man also on the front page. So
there's a site, and there's all kinds of different areas. I'm seeing a lot of Ross Andrew here, but I do know that there is a lot. You've got Mary Jane Mondays.
Yes. Yep. Again, Adam does those. Muhammad does the previews of what's coming out at your local comic shop. If you go up to the drop downs at the very top, you can see the different sections. JR, who's on my show, he had an early website too, and he just recently shut his down. If you scroll down just a little bit, if you look at the Spidey Kicks Butt over there on the right, this summer I transferred, he closed his site down, and I'm like, I don't want your articles to go away. So I put all of JR's articles there. So I've had so many people on the podcast say, I discovered your site from JR's site and his articles, his history of Spider-Man. If you click on Crawlspace staff, you can see some pictures of the staff. If you want to look at that.
Yeah, hold on a second. Where is that? Message board podcast.
It's over on the right. There you go. There's actually pictures of us.
Okay.
So you can see people that are currently working on the site after the COVID ad.
Yes, after for all of you who haven't gotten COVID yet, here it is.
Yeah, there we go. There's a little bit of a background. There's JR. I half-faced him with the Goblin.
And his son just turned 15?
No, his son's in college.
19, he said. Yeah. He was like crazy? A little kid at first. I remember.
There's George. He does our Friday Night Fights, also our reviews. And there's Ashley. She's awesome, and she's expecting a baby next month. So that's cool. There's Mike. He started reviewing Amazing with us. And now he does, you can see at the bottom, he's on that Bam Smack Pow website.
Okay.
Reviewing Amazing Spider-Man. And then there's Kelly. She's newest member. I think she started this year. So she's a big Mayday fan. And she was on that Tom DeFalco, Ron Friends, and Sal Buscema interview that we did. So that was fun. There's Chi-Town, who we were talking about. You should meet up with Chi-Town. He's a good dude.
I'll ask you about that when we close everything down.
Yeah, here. No doubt. But as you're seeing, there's tons of people that contribute. And there's Dark Mark and Neil, etc. So,
it's really interesting. So when I started listening to you, you had JR, you had Kevin, you had Zach. And when I decided to do a little background today, and I took a look at your 22nd anniversary, because I thought that would be a good place to start. I'm looking, I'm like, God, who are all these kids on this show? What happened to this thing?
Yeah. Well, it's the podcast has, and there's Mrs. Crawlspace. She helped me take pictures at the Chicago Comic-Con. That's where she got cold in the convention center. So we bought her a spider hoodie. But there's the podcast has had a lot of panelists come and go over the years, just like the website has. I mean, stuff comes up. They want to do their own show. They get married. They drop off of Spider-Man. Like Stella, she was the first female panelist we had on.
Right.
She
had Black Cat before that.
I don't think she was a regular. She came on every now and then, but she kind of dropped off. She was awesome. But Eddie, he's in Los Angeles, or California. I think Los Angeles. Currently lives in Los Angeles. He owns a comic shop. We had him on.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he owns a comic shop. He was part of a documentary about Stan Lee too. Every Sunday, if you look up on the front page of the Crawlspace, you'll see his original comic strip called Collectors. It's about a husband and wife and his addiction to comic books. So Eddie's a good dude. He's a good dude. So.
And then you've got Ryan there.
Yep, Ryan is a fellow teacher, and he does video reviews. He's got a green screen in his basement, and he reviews Amazing Spider-Man. So, and Sean and Thomas, and who else we got?
Thomas has been with the site for a long time, hasn't he?
Him and I start off not liking each other. We had a little bit of a disagreement over on CBR, but he does a monthly segment, and on the front page, if you look up, if you go to the columns, drop down in the middle, we have Cobwebs, Tangled Webs. All those are different articles about Spider-Man, and Thomas does one of those. So, yep. And Mohammed does the previews. And who else we got at the bottom? Oh, Adam does the daily spider panels. So, and we have Bill, and who else do we have? Andre writes a column. But there you go. And then there's been a ton of former contributors. Yep.
And then there you are again.
Yep.
So I'm gonna stop the share. So I think we'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to say about the site? Is there anything that you'd like to add?
JR and I have often joked that after we die, our children will take the podcast reins. My daughter doesn't show an interest in Spider-Man, but
she's only 10 though, right?
She's 10. Yeah. But the site, it's amazing how many hours I put into it, how many hours my friends have put into it. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's next for it. If you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be doing this video live streaming, I wouldn't have believed it. But I don't know what am I going to be, a hologram in someone's living room? I just recently, I thought it was cool. Someone sent a picture. They were in their hotel room watching the Crawlspace live stream, and they had a YouTube app. So they were watching it in their hotel room with us up on their big television because they had a smart app of it. And I just think that's crazy that people are watching it on their smart televisions now. They're watching it on their phones. They're watching it everywhere. So it's just amazing where the viewership comes from. And my little site that I just wanted to type reviews and talk to people on a message board is now being broadcast in their homes and their living rooms. I don't know what's next for it. I can't predict the future. Hopefully I'm not slow to it like I am the YouTube and the Instagram and Discord train. So it's crazy.
Well, as far as YouTube is concerned, I don't think there was a slowness to it. Mm-hmm. I think that there are things that were happening, but I think especially since everyone's been trapped inside their houses, everybody is on YouTube.
No doubt.
And it's, I was talking to my wife the other day, and when I was doing that interview with Stella, my wife had cut my hair, and I was like, God, it looked really chopped up. It looked really awful.
Dude, you got great follicles. Don't embrace them.
Yeah, right. But one of the things I said, she felt funny about it, and I said, well, here's the thing though, I've been watching all of these videos and everyone looks like crap on these videos, and everyone's on YouTube, and it's just kind of, you got the bad lighting, you have this, you have that, and it's just where we are right now.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the Brad Douglas hologram in my living room.
Oh, I think you don't want it. I'd have to dress up. Just getting away. Back in the day, we could just they didn't care what you look like. Now I've got a Yeti mic here. I got a high def camera here. I bought a ring light up here so it lights my face. I mean, it's crazy if we're doing a full head to toe shot. So that's funny. So
do you want to tell people where they can find you?
SpidermanCrawlspace.com. It's been there since 2000 with the domain name. We've got links to the social media stuff. If you type Spider-Man Crawlspace in any pod catcher, you can find us. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. Find us on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. What else am I forgetting? Basically, we're everywhere. When I do a live broadcast, I send 4 signals out to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. So that's fun. That's a fun deal with all the comments that come in. We've got coming up in November, we've got Spider History coming up. Mm-hmm. I mean, not Spider History. We've got Spider Jeopardy coming up, which is our yearly quiz show that George, I hand the reins over to George. He's the host for that episode. And we've done it 10 plus years, and I've tied JR once. And that's the closest I've ever come to winning. So this is my year, though. Scott, this is my year. I'm winning.
You gotta brush up on all the Denny O'Neil issues.
Oh, and Spider Ham. George loves Spider Ham questions. I am lax on my Spider Ham. We've also got coming up in December, we do a fun show, the Spider-Man Gift Exchange, where all the panelists give each other a weird Spider-Man collectible as a gift. That's a fun show. That one's more fun. We used to do that audio. It's more fun visually, so people can see what the gift is. We've also got another Spider cosplay episode coming up in November. That'll be fun. Where I
talk a little bit about that real quick. What is that?
My friend Chi-Town, your buddy Peter in Chicago, he is a cosplayer. I think he calls himself retired now, but he and I, and also we've interviewed some people that Kelly's also on the show. We interview people that dress up. They make their costumes, and we interview the Spider-Man related ones. So if you go to YouTube, you can search for those. Coming up soon in November, we've got one specifically devoted to Mary Jane cosplayers. We've got several of those lined up. That's going to be fun. But that one's that's one thing I've started doing a little bit differently. Shows like that are better visually than audio. Mm-hmm. The show I did recently with the Spider Collectors is better visually than audio. I've debated if I even want to release those in audio form, because when I say, hey, that's a cool looking thing, the audio listener can't see that. It really, but when I put it on the front page, I also embed the YouTube video so you can actually see it if you want to, or you just want to listen to it in your car. But some of the shows are more visual than they are audio these days. So especially when I do the review show, I also put a picture on the screen. Now I do the first 3 pages of Comixology gives you a preview, so I can actually show what's happening.
It's interesting. You were talking about embracing the technology. I said like 10 minutes ago, I was going to let you go, but you're talking about embracing the technology and how you relate to the game. But it sounds to me like you're right on time. You're doing it. It's like I said, I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, mm-hmm. And everybody's doing stuff like this. And, but it sounds to me like you're going out of your way to be more visual. So no, you're right on time. You're not far behind at all, or you're not behind at all.
I don't want to fall too far behind. I still want to be on the forefront. I don't want to be a 50-year-old fan that can't attract anybody that's under 40. So, and as witnessed by people on my show, JR and George and I are the oldest ones there. Mm-hmm. Kelly and Chi-Town's about my age, but it's nice to get the younger folks in to talk about Spider-Man. And Neil is in college. He's on our show. He's 20-ish. I don't know his exact age, but they're the generation that came up when I launched the site, which sounds weird. 22, which is crazy. So,
well, the funny thing about that is you go to different eras. You go to the start of the Brand New Day era, and everything was like crazy, and they missed that whole thing. So to them, it's just buying the old issues and reading them. Which, if you do that in a chunk, away from the drama of all of it, means
mm-hmm.
nothing.
Those issues weren't aimed at the long-term fans. Those were trying to put a new worm on the hook, throw it in the lake, and see if we catch some new mm-hmm. fans. It wasn't the fish that's already been caught. Right. to keep with the fishing analogy, I'm not even a fishing guy, but the long-term ones, like myself and you, we're already sold. They've already counted our sales. They're trying to get new blood, and I don't blame them for that, but I think if you do it with good storytelling and not eliminate us older ones, Pixar does it. They try to get the young kids, and they also try to get something for the adult in there too. But divorcing Spider-Man, making him 3 times a month, I think the boat has been put on the right path now with Nick Spencer. Mm-hmm. I like his stuff a lot more than his predecessor. I do think editorial interferes a lot with it. I think they try to pad out the stories, as witnessed by the Secret Invasion book. Mm-hmm. Used to buy a 12-issue limited series that was called Secret Wars. Now there would be 15 other side books that you could buy. But anyway, it's a smaller audience that they're trying to get, and occasionally they try to get the younger kids into to read it. So
it's interesting. Okay, so I have one more question.
all right, I'm ready.
This is more comic related than anything else.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found, and I found this with the Spider-Man writers, and I'll avoid the obvious, but I'll say it for J. Michael Straczynski.
Uh-huh.
Is I personally feel, and I'm curious to see what your take on this is people who write these books, and whether it's J. Michael Straczynski on Amazing Spider-Man, or whether it's Mark Waid on The Flash, or whether it's, they've got 60 good issues in them.
Mm.
And then after that, the wheels start to fall off the cart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with JMS, he actually benefited from the unmasking and the Civil War stuff because it added new life to the stories. But before that, after he hit his 60th issue, it started going down. You know, it's like you're falling down the stairs.
Right.
And I wonder what you think about that. Would you agree or no?
Well, Stan Lee had 100 in him and did Amazing Spider-Man.
The character, that's a little different.
Yeah, that's true.
Bendis had 100. What do you have, 150 or 200 or
something like that? Yeah, I think they're, especially with Amazing Spider-Man coming out twice a month, their 60 gets eaten up quick. Right. So their 60 issues is spread out over 30 months or something instead of 60 months. Yeah, I think any writer has X amount of stories in their brain, and they decide, well, if sales are still good, do I still want to cash the check but do a mediocre job? Sure. I think the obvious, like you said, he ran out right when that new volume came out, when Peter Parker was a billionaire. I think that story was atrocious. Straczynski, I didn't really care for his Spider Totem stuff, but his marriage writing was excellent. His Back in Black was excellent. He had more good than bad. But do you read Marvel Unlimited on? Do you have a subscription?
I don't.
I've been binging because I've got an iPad and I read before I go to bed. I've had that subscription for like 3 or 4 years, and I went back and I read Amazing all the way through. I read the Hulk all the way through. The summer I finished Captain America all the way through. The one thing, Peter David is one of my favorite writers, and he was on the Hulk 10 to 12 years is my guess. And you could see towards the end of his run, it was kind of, it was time. It was time for a new writer with that. And I think your theory of about 60 issues is correct. They may get a spark like JMS. I keep wanting to say JMD.
It's hard.
But Straczynski got a little, he was going down a little bit, but then it spiked back up with Back in Black and Civil War. But I've noticed that with Peter David. I've noticed that with DeFalco's second run on Amazing. I personally didn't think it was as strong as his first, but yeah, I agree with your theory. I like anything, there's X amount of ideas in your brain, and you can only get so many out. And so, yeah. Well,
the flip side to that, the other person was Howard Mackey.
Yes.
Who I saw him in Baltimore a year ago. And the nicest person in the world. It was funny because he was there with his wife, and she had the same look on her face that my wife had as she was sitting at my table. And I walked up, and she was sitting there by herself, and I'm like, "You're the wife, aren't you?" I could tell. Yeah. But he's super duper nice guy.
Yeah, I had him on the show. He was. Yeah, really I know nice. You did. Yeah, you did. Really good dude.
But he was somebody who I felt ran out.
Well, they really drained him because he'd been on Spider-Man, 5-6 years, and they were like, okay, let's double your content, right? Both of the reboots.
And change everything on you.
Yeah, yeah. And his tank was about dry anyway.
Right.
And to make him go for another marathon, I don't think was fair to him or the readers.
Right. So, okay, we're going to stop this cool. There. Otherwise, we'll be doing this for the next 5 hours. And thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I might ask you to come back at some point and ask you more pointed questions on stuff. And then the next installment of this thing I'm doing with no title on it, we will have a paranormal investigator, and that'll be later on this week for Halloween.
Nice.
And then there's a special guest who you actually know, Brad, coming up sometime in November, but I'll talk about that later on.
Oh, look at you tease. I like that.
Yes. Well, for the 3 people who view this later on, they've got to come back.
There you go.
So I'm going to stop it there. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you,
Brad. And thanks everybody for watching. Oop, wrong one. Hold on. Hold on.